On this one, we're going to talk about Miranda rights, and we get questions about Miranda rights dozens of times a week. And so I want to talk how it applies in a DWI, but first let's talk about Miranda rights generally, because a lot of folks, they see it on TV, so they think if the cop failed to read them their Miranda rights, then the case is going to get dismissed. And that's not how Miranda works. So how Miranda works is, now that you're being detained, now that you're arrested, they are required to read you your rights. If they don't, the penalty for it is if you made a confession after that point, they can't use that confession. And so most of the time when folks are talking with us, they did not make a confession after that point. So even though they weren't read their Miranda rights, it's not going to help win the case. And so it's a good question to ask, like, hey, if they fail to read the rights, can we get the case dismissed? And unfortunately, the answer is no. The other thing with a DWI that's a little tweak on Miranda is that the officer is welcome to ask investigative questions before they make the decision to detain you. And so unfortunately, questions like, were you driving, were you drinking, our courts have said falls outside of Miranda. They're able to ask those questions. So DWI is a little different in that they're able to begin the interrogation without having an obligation to read you your Miranda. And then after they've performed everything, if they're making the decision to arrest you, sometimes they'll skip over Miranda. But with them skipping it at that point, it's not going to help you. It's not going to give us a basis to dismiss the case. The only way that it helps us is if your only admission that you were driving, if your only admission that you were drinking occurred after they were supposed to give you Miranda, then it will help us. But in my experience in a DWI, if the client ever made those admissions, they made it before the Miranda rights had to be read. But again, that's if we're evaluating the case for you, that's something that we'll look at. Looking at the video is where should have Miranda been issued, and then what was said or what wasn't said before and after that point. But that's how Miranda works with a DWI.